Until July 3rd, 2009, I, like most other young adults, wore my cloak of invincibility proudly and thought I could do just about anything, and tomorrow was just another day on my calendar to have fun. A few jumps later, a piercing noise that everyone in the backyard heard, and my screams that rang out ripped the cloak off of my 23-year-old life for good. In a split second, I went from trampoline enthusiast to someone in sheer terror whose leg no longer felt attached. As many of you have probably been hurt before, you can understand the instant fear. But what many of you will hopefully soon understand is how one fleeting moment can instantly shape the rest of your life. My youthful ideals were taken with that invincibility cloak, and through the next 4 years changed into respect for life and simple things that our invincibility lets us take for granted. One moment, one decision, one permanent disability, invincible no more. No longer invincible, I now had to face the consequences of my jumping. I tore all the ligaments that physically attached the top leg bone to the bottom through my knee. I was put in a large leg cast to keep the knee immobilized and depended on crutches and a wheelchair to get around. 2 surgeries within a year after my injury, both that left me in more pain than before and resulted in me getting a lifelong chronic pain condition. 2.5 years of intensive physical therapy that varied from 3 to 5 days per week and involved me screaming and crying from pain rather than seeing any advancements. Even the therapists were at a loss because it was causing more harm than good, and I was losing muscle and function in the process. Multiple doctors trying different tests and therapies to see why traditional treatments were not working. In the end, there were few answers and still many questions, leaving me in horrible pain and feeling defeated. All of the pain, chaos, treatments, therapies, medicines, and confusion created an emotional roller coaster for me. On this coaster, I had many feelings. The happy feelings every time I got excited with the new possibility of a treatment. The down times and the why me moments. I would sit around and talk about all the things that I couldn't ever do again, like walk or run or chase children that I enjoyed doing. The why me moments, when I would sit around and wonder why this happened to me, why that day, doing an activity I'd done millions of times before. And the fear of being useless for the rest of my life and having to constantly depend on others for help. And the fear of constantly being hurt and having to walk 5 steps and fall. With the varying emotions and hardships, I was able to find out much more about myself and life and began looking at the finer moments throughout this terrible time. I started looking at the things that I used to take for granted, like living and being alone for more than an hour at a time without supervision. Financial independence, not having to depend on my parents to pay my bills for the rest of my life. And the smaller things, like walking, running, and bathing. I also had to look at shifting all of my goals. I went from being a soccer coach and a nanny to needing a new life, a new career, a new future, and new goals. Those all led me to being able to finally go back to college. And the relationships and bonds were one of the best parts. I became much more closer and dependable with my family. I became better friends with people who stuck around and helped me out. And I no longer cared about those acquaintances that just liked things on Facebook. Through these moments, I found strength, and they helped me to form my new cloak. 4 years later, after medical trials and tribulations, emotional ups and downs, and a permanent perspective change, I live my life with a new cloak. I live every moment to the fullest and have a greater respect and acknowledgement for the simpler things that many of us take for granted. My future is mine, and with my new outlook, I hope to make a change in the world we live in and never take anything for granted again. It took one jump, one scream, one fleeting moment to change my life and perspective forever. And now my cloak of invincibility is a cloak of new possibilities.